Welcome to Gambling with an Edge with your hosts Bob Dancer and Richard Munchkin. Bob Dancer is America's premier video poker writer and teacher. He's written 10 books, including Video Poker for the Intelligent Beginner and the best-selling $1 Million Video Poker. He helped develop the computer software Video Poker for Winners, and in 2004 he was inducted into the Video Poker Hall of Fame. Richard Munchkin has been a professional advantage player for over 30 years and is in the Blackjack Hall of Fame. His book, Gambling Wizards, Conversations with the World's Greatest Gamblers, is a testament to the many ways you can succeed at gambling. The goal of the show is that you'll be a more knowledgeable gambler tomorrow than you were yesterday. And now, here are Bob and Richard.
Good evening. Welcome to Gambling with an Edge. I'm Bob Dancer.
And I'm Richard Munchkin.
Our guest tonight is Poker Hall of Famer Phil Hellmuth. Love him or hate him, we'll be talking to the Poker Brat in a few minutes. Richard, I've heard you've become a vegan. Is that true?
Well, I've become a lost vegan. So, I've finally completed my move, so I'm now living here and happy to be here. I had to say to the movers, yes, of course the ping pong table goes in the living room. Where else would you put it?
How could they not know that? I'm actually delighted he's here too. Sometimes when we would host a radio show, he would be in California while I would be here in the studio, and we'd kind of have to guess a little bit. And so now when you're co-hosting, pointing and things like that are useful gestures to making it all come off okay. So anyway, I'm happy he's here. So there were gambling issues on the ballots across the country. We haven't been following most of them, although we did express concern last week over Proposition 3 here in Nevada. I was very concerned that I'd have to give up video poker and do some hard thinking about what I was going to do when I grow up, if I do. Fortunately, from a gambler's point of view anyway, that measure was defeated handily. Any comment on that, Richard?
No, I mean, it's good that it went down. I've seen some argument about what it actually would have meant, but it's all moot now that it was defeated. The other big one was Massachusetts, of course, passed theirs, so looks like Steve Wynn will be putting up a big casino in Massachusetts.
All right. In my weekly blog that appears on the LasVegasAdvisor.com website, as well as BobDancer.com, this week I took the lazy man's way out. I came across an old article by poker writer Ed Miller that I thought video poker players should read. So I lifted 400 words from it, sent Ed an email saying, "You don't mind if I do this, do you?" And he said, "Go ahead." So I did. What the article was about was using your score today or right now to determine when to stop playing. Assuming you're not really, really close to bankruptcy, in which case we should be having another discussion altogether, the amount of money in your bankroll when you woke up this morning is not a particularly significant number. It's merely one data point in your year-long or lifelong score. As we all know, it'll go up and it'll go down. So worrying about things such as getting back to even or how much you had an hour ago, that takes away from the brain power you should be using to play the next hand correctly. I've said for years that today's score doesn't matter. Ed Miller said it differently, but came to a very similar bottom line. Richard, you asked me to mention this column tonight for some reason. Did you have a comment or a rebuttal?
I thought Ed's system for poker players was to basically have a whole bunch of chips in your pocket, and as your stack depletes, bring out more so that you're always at about the same buy-in level if you're losing. And hopefully the more you do this, you'll just sort of lose track of how many chips you've taken out of your pocket and be able to think more clearly. But I thought one of the really interesting things when I interviewed Kat Hulbert for the book, she brought up the fact that as a poker player, she felt that most players have it exactly wrong. Most players want to keep playing when they're stuck and try to get back to even. And she felt that when you're losing, that's when you should quit early. And when you're winning, that's when you want to stay longer and longer. Because, chips are power at the poker table. And the more chips you have, the more powerful you are. And your opponents are more intimidated. It seems like you're doing everything right. So when she was winning, she would keep playing as long as she was winning. And if she was losing, well, you tend to play worse, start making bad decisions, and those are the times when you should just quit.
One of the interesting things way back when, I used to be a backgammon player in Los Angeles. And there was a man named Joe Russell who was a world champion of backgammon at one point. He was one of the best local players in backgammon in Los Angeles. And he would come to the Cavendish West, which is a club near Los Angeles, about 10 o'clock at night. He would be freshly having dinner and gone to the gym and quite alert, whereas a lot of the rest of the players had been there since 4 or 6 in the afternoon or sometimes noon and playing forever and ever and were exhausted when he got there. So he came and was very alert and basically easy picking. So that worked to his advantage. Of course, it helps if you're a world-class player. But I found that a good lesson that I learned from Joe. He didn't tell it to me, but he just showed it to me by his actions. And that is, pick your spot and do what you do when the time is right.
Yeah, I knew several players who poker players here in Las Vegas who the worst tourist players are playing Friday and Saturday night, and by 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning they're drunk and tired and playing really badly. So they would do basically the same thing. They would sleep all day and wake up late on Friday and go to the poker room late on Friday night, so that they'd be fresh and they could play all night and against when players are at their worst.
Another interesting thing to talk about maybe, Phil is actually going to be calling in about 2 minutes, so we're stalling a little bit. But recently I wrote an article that's going to appear in the Las Vegas Advisor blog in the next couple of weeks about my experience at the SLS casino during its opening weekend. And one of the pleasant things that happened to me is I did hit a $100,000 royal flush. And the next day, basically all the good machines in the high limit room had been eliminated or had their pay schedule slashed. So I got a lot of flack from people that I personally had deliberately gone out and ruined the SLS games for everybody, which I thought was kind of interesting. But that's just welcome to my world. I get those kind of things. When Richard heard that, he said, ask me about that on the air someday. I have a reaction to that. So consider yourself asked.
That stuff just drives me up the wall. This idea that you're supposed to earn less so that other people can earn more. I mean, I see it all the time. And the most ridiculous one I saw was regarding Phil Ivey. That he somehow had been greedy and, shouldn't have won so much money and he wouldn't have had these problems. I mean, the guy won like $50 million with this move. And somebody has the gall to say, oh, he did it wrong. I mean, he got away with this in Macau, in several places in Las Vegas, in Atlantic City, and then had this incident in London. And these people are now going to sort of, with their hindsight, decide what he should have done. But also, it just angers me, the idea that, I should milk the game so that other people, can bet their nickels and quarters and grind away at it forever. It's just ridiculous,
There's a lot of people who have the tendency that if I were this other person, if I were in that situation, I would do this. Or if I were Alex Rodriguez, who is a famous baseball player with certain issues, and if I were Alex Rodriguez, I wouldn't do it quite that way. And the thing is, you're not Alex Rodriguez. You are not in his shoes.
Yeah, I mean, it does bother me when people waste a game, where they burn it out needlessly by doing things that are stupid. Like people who find a hole card and do things like hit hard 19 because they know the dealer has 20. Okay, well, then, yeah, I would say you're doing it wrong. You're not only are you costing everyone else money, you're costing yourself money when you do those kind of things. But the idea that people should bet less so that you might be able to earn more, to me, is just ridiculous.
We usually do this at the end of the show, but let me go to the commercials first so that when Phil does actually call in, we can go to that section and do the rest of the hour with him. The South Point has more than 10,000 games, returning more than 99%. This is more than anybody else have. In November, they have a promotion where if you earn 2,000 points before November 23rd, you get a free frozen turkey and turkey platter the Sunday through Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Also, Thanksgiving Day, double points for video poker, midnight to midnight, no limits, all machines. The free video poker class this coming week is called Secrets of a Video Poker Winner. This is a philosophy class of how it's done. It's not how to play the hands. It is what the winning process is. So that's probably the most important class of the semester. That'll be Wednesday at noon in the Grandview Lounge. Everyone at least 21 years of age and older is welcome. At the Palms, the Play for Prizes, PFP, for the next until November 13th is going to be TJ Maxx or Marshall's gift cards. And starting the following Monday for 2 weeks will be Costco. There are drawings every Friday night in November at the Palms where $10,000 is split among the winners. You get 5 times drawing entries Friday and Saturday, 8 to midnight, and all day, and yet 2 times drawing tickets all day Sunday and Tuesday. At videopoker.com, it's the best place to play a lot of games. If you sign up for the gold membership, this allows you to get correction on most games. It is the only place to get corrections on quick quads, for example. Quick quads is my personal favorite game. It is the game I'll be playing on Thanksgiving at the South Point. They have contests. The weekly contest for this week is Ultimate X. Ultimate X is a high volatility game where what you earn this hand gives you multipliers for next hand. All right, let's talk to our guest. Phil Hellmuth has earned more World Series of Poker bracelets than anyone else, including the main event back in 1989. While he didn't add to his bracelet total this year, he made it to 4 World Series of Poker final tables, so he was very close. He's been featured on television poker shows many, many times, and is also known for losing his temper more than occasionally. Phil Hellmuth, welcome to Gambling with an Edge.
How's it going, guys?
It's going good. The final table of this year's World Series of Poker begins next week. 2 years ago, it was dreadfully slow as every player took a full minute or more to make every play, even the obvious ones. Last year, it got speeded up. What do you think the speed will be this year?
Well, I mean, you hit the topic, the hot topic in poker on the head here. You hit the nail on the head in that poker, when people take a long time to act, it's not really fun for anybody. I mean, someone takes 20 seconds to fold a hand they know they're going to fold, or a minute to make a raise, or 2 minutes to make a raise. Now listen, it's okay when someone moves all in, it's for your tournament life, and you're trying to make a decision. What do I do? Do I call off all my chips or not? So every once in a while, you can take 3, 4, 5 minutes, but just to do it on a regular basis is no good. You don't see the old school players doing it, and we've cleaned it up. It's like golf. You look at what's happening in golf, and it's the same way. The rounds were too slow. So you're seeing poker speed up, and I don't think you're going to have the same issues that we had 2 years ago.
Do you think people were doing that because they wanted more television time, or was it nerves, or what do you think it was about?
I think that you have a lot of people that just are more inexperienced. You won't see a lot of the great professionals or the guys that have been around for a long time do that stuff all the time. And I think that if you take more time in general, you are going to make better decisions. And so I think people just took it to an extreme, and it was bad for the game. And so it's annoying for me when someone takes way too long. I'll say that. And so I do think it was about, all right, we're trying to make the best decision. I don't think it was about getting more television time.
As a past winner of the main event, plus being a member of the Poker Hall of Fame, do you have any additional privileges or responsibilities, or even a job as a commentator during the November 9?
Yeah, I'll answer that. First, let me say that I'm looking at the water tower here in Chicago. Man, this is a great view. I'm at the Rush Street Gaming headquarters here. No, they don't pay me anything. Lake Michigan I see behind me. Well, what a beautiful view here. I'm in Greg Carlin, the CEO of Rush Gaming's office as I do this interview. I have a busy weekend. Tonight, last night I played with Chicago Billionaires in a private game, and just had a great time.
That must have been nice.
Tonight we're going to raise $1.5 million for charity for teaching tolerance. That's exciting. And then I'm going to get to Vegas Friday night. At 11 p.m. I'm going to meet with a producer for what I'm going to be doing, which is going to be like a game day set at the World Series of Poker. So it'll be me, Daniel Negreanu, and Kara Scott. And I'm looking forward to that because it hasn't been done before. So every 15-minute break we'll be on for 10 or 11 minutes talking about hands, talking about plays, talking about trends. Hopefully slow play won't come up during that conversation. Saturday, all the players, the November 9ers, they're doing all their interviews, so I'll attend about half of those. Sunday, we're going to practice, and then and Sunday I'm going to induct Jack McClelland into the Poker Hall of Fame, so I have to somehow write a 10-minute speech for him. And then Monday is the main event on ESPN Live, and then Tuesday will be the heads-up portion of the main event. So and Wednesday I fly to Pittsburgh and I film Poker Night in America stuff. I like being around the main event final table, so I'm really happy that I have a job there. I feel the years I haven't been there, I felt a little bit cocky, like it's good for poker when I'm there, I feel like. And so pardon the ego, but I think it's not bad when I show up. I think that you want to see the past champions at the most major events in every sport, and so it feels natural and normal for me to be there.
When you say you're doing these 10-minute sets, now this is before the play starts, and you said you were talking about analyzing hands, so I don't quite understand what these 10-minute sets are. Are these going to air during the main event?
Live during the main event. Here's the flow of the show. The first it'll be Lon and Norm and Antonio Esfandiari, the magician. They're going to do a quick 2 or 3 minute monologue, before play begins. Then they go live to play. At an hour and 35 minutes, they're going to go on a 15 or 20 minute break, and that's where Daniel, Kara, Scott, and I will talk about some of the hands that the public saw that are of interest to us. We're going to break down the action. We're going to make predictions who's going to win, and I think it's going to just be kind of a light, fun segment where we explain to the audience what's going on. 2 hours after that, same thing, or maybe an hour and a half after that. No, 2 hour levels at the World Series. So then 2 hours after that we'll be on again, and then 2 hours after that we'll be on again. And, if it goes till 4 a.m, then we'll do, 6 segments or whatever.
And do you have a prediction now on who's going to win?
I do have a prediction now. I think that, Mark Newhouse is, I think he's going to win. I think that, sometimes people have to get close before they pull it off. You see it with sports teams all the time, Someone makes the championships like the Miami Heat, and then the next year they win it, where the year before they finished second. So Mark Newhouse was the first out of the final table last year, and I think this time he'll be the last one out. I think he's going to win. I think that there's a couple of really good players there as well. I think that, Van Hoof is an interesting one because walking through the room on day 4, the producer, Maury Eskandani, who owns Poker Productions, said, Phil, I want you to make some predictions, about, how far people are going to go. So I did that. I did several segments for several days. None of them made the cut. That's okay. But Maury said to me, look at Van Hoof. Look at the way he's looking left, looking right. He's paying attention. This kid's going to go far. And I kind of agreed with him. But, I give Maury Eskandani credit for... and then Van Hoof saw us talking about him, and he came over and shook hands and wanted to say hello. And I told him, I said, man, we like the way you're looking around, but Maury, who's a genius, kind of predicted you're going to go a long ways. It's amazing, then, to watch it all unfold as Van Hoof takes the chip lead, And when Maury said what he said, Van Hoof had $1.5 million, And he was just going on, wow, this guy seems to be sharp. So a heck of a prediction on Maury's part, but I'm going with Newhouse.
Which is a bold prediction, because Newhouse is one of the smaller chip stacks, and that's very good. All right. You mentioned both Daniel Negreanu and Jack McClellan. They will join you in the Hall of Fame next week. Other than Phil Ivey, who's got to be 100% locked to get in as soon as he reaches his 40th birthday, who do you think is the most deserving to be inducted in the next 2 or 3 or 4 years into the Hall of Fame?
There's a whole mix of names, right? A whole mix of names. You can talk about Gus Hansen, Carlos Mortensen. It might be Carlos is supposed to be the next guy in, but you could make a case for Gus. You could make a case for Carlos. You could make a case for John Juanda. And, those are 3 of the guys. I think Jennifer Harmon's going in. I think Huck Seed's going in. So, that's kind of 5 of probably, those might even be the top 5. That's just off the top of my head. But I think the Hall of Fame is going to have Carlos Mortensen in it. It's going to have Gus Hansen. It's going to have John Juanda. It's going to have Jennifer Harmon. It's going to have Huck Seed. So, yeah, those 5 people are going in. I think Mike Matusow also is going to make it. So that's, 6 I predicted. But, we kind of know who the great players are. It's a matter of when they get inducted, And so we'll see what happens. Daniel is the first ballot Hall of Famer because the rule to be 40 to be in was just implemented. So, for me, I almost went into the Hall of Fame in 2001. I was told, I was down to the final table of the main event with Carlos Mortensen, and they told me after I busted in 5th place that had I won it, I was going straight into the Hall of Fame. At that point, I was pretty young. But, ever since the concept of first ballot Hall of Famers entered the lexicon of poker, which is just a few years ago, I was inducted in 2007 or something, it looks like Negreanu is going to be the first ballot Hall of Famer.
And Ivey's likely the second?
Ivey, for sure, is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. So those 2 guys are first ballot Hall of Famers. That concept didn't exist when I was around.
Okay.
I think I might have been as well, but...
Yeah, you certainly had the credentials for it. At many tournaments, you show up in elaborate costumes, sometimes with an entourage, and sometimes late, so that part of your beginning stack has been blinded off. At first blush, it would seem that having your stack blinded off would negatively impact your results. Still, you've had more World Series of Poker cashes than anybody else, so it doesn't seem to have hurt you too much. So how does this help you?
Well, the concept said, listen, I have sleep apnea, so that's what I didn't know when I was doing this. I just knew that I needed extra sleep. And so, that's probably why I didn't do as well in college as I wanted to do. I couldn't get up for the classes. So, I remember, I would sleep 10, 11 hours, and I'd still be extraordinarily tired, and I just never really understood it. Discovered I had sleep apnea by accident when I went in with my son Nicholas, because he was young and we didn't want him to spend the night at a facility by himself. So we went in and said, hey, we'll test Phil too. And then, wow, somehow I was the one with sleep apnea, which is great to have diagnosed. It's been 6 or 7 years I've used the CPAP machine. I've never missed a single night. And it's impacted my life in a huge way. Sleep apnea, unfortunately, is it's causal for diabetes and heart disease. And 20% of the people in the States have sleep apnea, and too many people. If you snore a lot, you have it, and you should go get diagnosed. And so I think that impacted it. And so basically what I wanted to do is I felt like if I forced myself to show up at noon, I was too tired, and I would play poorly, and I'd be busted out by 1. So I'm like, I'm not falling into that pattern. I'm going to sleep as long as I can, and I'm going to show up, and I'm going to play my chips like a champion when I get there. So that would sometimes mean I'd show up at 2:30. When they changed the structures to be really deep and really long, and for a while it was absurd that you could win every pot for 2 levels and not have even a double stack. But that favored me in that, the limits were so small the first few hours that it really didn't hurt me at all. I'd lose 5% of my stack, 10% of my stack, and everyone used to make fun of that, except that I just kept crushing it. So I would come in just completely fresh at 3 p.m., and they'd all be already tired. And so I felt like I had to play great for 4 hours till dinner break. I might even take a nap on the hour dinner break and come back fresh again. So, you get very fatigued when you play, 5 weeks of 10-hour days. And so I just felt like being fresh was a lot more important. Now, I must say, about 3 years ago, they changed the rules. It was a nice change for me because basically now you can sign up 4 levels late and start with the same chip stack as everybody else. Well, everybody liked that rule because there's a tournament at noon and a tournament at 5. And if you busted out at 6 or 7, in the past you couldn't play the 5 o'clock tournament. So it was so popular they extended to a 6-hour, 6-level rule. So now you can play a 5 p.m. tournament at 11 with a full stack. So, so now it doesn't hurt me at all to make sure I'm properly rested.
And what was the idea behind the costumes?
The costume thing was it was a very weird but kind of organic way it developed, where I had like 13 sponsors at the time, which was pretty cool. And I thought, you know what? I was talking to my attorney, and we're like, you should show up in a NASCAR outfit with all your sponsors' names on it. So I hired someone to make that. I hired the daughter of John Benetti, the granddaughter, to make that costume for me, one in gold and one in black, and just paid her some money to do it, and had all of it sewn on. Well, my intent was to wear it the first day of the World Series, of the 5-week-long series. But I think they misunderstood me, and they said, there was some miscommunication there. They did a great job, but there's a little miscommunication. And what happens is the costume shows up a couple days before the main event. So I said, heck, I'll wear this thing, for day 1 of the main event. So I showed up, and there were cameras everywhere. Look, Phil has a NASCAR suit. The company I worked for at the time wanted to film commercials with me because they'd gotten wind of it. They knew it was coming a couple of months out. So they started filming commercials of me driving a NASCAR in the parking lot of the Rio. So now there was a commercial being filmed around my entrance. Then there were tons of cameras. And I don't know if they hired a bunch of models to come with me that first year. But the first year I kind of came in, and it became a big thing. It made the ESPN coverage, and when I crashed the NASCAR, it was a top 10 Sports Center highlight, where I really did injure myself.
That could be a deadly way to get into the highlights.
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, I hurt myself, and it kind of blew my chances to win the main event. But that's another story. So, and then the next year, we said, all right, let's just do it again. What should we come as? How about Caesar? And so we just kept coming in, so it just year after year, and it became more elaborate. The Caesar might have been year 3 or 4, where they carried me in, and they rented a $70,000 leather, outfit for me, and I think Caesar's my favorite one. All these beautiful women walking in with me, and it just ended up getting a lot of mainstream coverage, and so we just went with it for a few years there. And I intend to start doing it again. I think it's been 3 or 4 years without me coming in, but I'm going to get back to that eventually.
I don't know if you're the best poker player in the world, but it does seem to me you are the best at manipulating the media, by far better than any other poker player alive.
I'll take that as a compliment.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's got to be worth a lot of money over the years, I mean, you got your Jack in the Box commercial, right? Or is it Carl Jr.?
Carl's Jr., yes, Diet Pepsi, and who knows?
Yeah.
Well, the Carl's Jr. one's been fun because, I filmed that thing in, I think, April. And, I kind of forgot I'd filmed it. Just thought it's going to be cool when it comes out. And when the commercial came out in August, it started hitting in August, I was like, oh my God, this is my favorite thing I've ever done. Because it was so cool. They did such a good job with it, and then it just started being on, like I'd see it 4 times during, the number 1 college game, and I'd see it during the NFL games, and I was like, this is cool, and of course, the phone started ringing off the hook for me to, do a bunch of other stuff. So, it's kind of interesting how, having a mainstream, Carl's Jr. Hardy on the East Coast, Hardy's commercial just kind of, was a big shot in the arm for me. And I thought it was just, they did a great job with it,
Well, Brett Favre made a fortune out of doing commercials on his Indecision. Presumably, you're going to sometime have commercials about you having some kind of explosion. And there's going to be a commercial about that. Don't know what it is going to be, but there's going to be one.
Could be Old Spice. Who knows?
Now, which end of the horse are you going to be on, the Old Spice? No, don't take that.
Barkley did Old Spice. I mean, we had some pretty cool Old Spice commercials.
Yeah, we did. Now, the term video poker usually applies to a very different sort of a game, but there's a machine called Texas Hold'em heads-up poker, where a player can play limit hold'em against the machine while looking at a video of either you or Johnny Chan trash-talking them. My question is, how good is that machine?
That machine was developed with some of the cutting-edge software of our time, and I don't think that they even have it cranked up to. I think that machine's set at 90%. I don't even think they have it at 100%. Now, some of the best limit hold'em players in the world can play that machine heads up and win. I know that. I know one of the guys I know won $55,000 on the machine. Another guy, Chow Gyang, says that anytime I want, he'll go over and play the machine, and I can book him. So if he wins $10,000, I owe him $10,000. If he loses $10,000, he owes me $10,000. So he's that confident he can beat the machine. And so I think what's happened is, we're selling a lot of these machines. Greg Carlin's in the room right now. Greg, you know my Texas Hold'em machine, right?
I do.
Did you guys buy any for your casinos?
We're looking at it. My slot guys are looking at it, and I'm sure we'll put some in.
Yeah, because it's the number 1 grossing slot machine at the Bellagio. You have to get a few of these, Greg. See, now I'm selling right on the radio show to a CEO.
Yeah, and good. I hope it works for you. Now, frequently,
I think they've deployed 500 of those machines, which is great for me, and hopefully we'll get to 1,000, 2,000 machines. It really is the number 1 grossing machine at the Bellagio. People seem to love it. It took a couple of days of filming to get that machine, to get all the video for it. They laughed at me when I said, "Hey, I started saying I have 12 bracelets, 13 bracelets, 14 bracelets." They laughed at me when I filmed this a couple of years ago. And I said, why would you laugh? I'm just going to save you time from me coming back in the studio. And then I won 2 bracelets since I recorded all that stuff in 2012. And so now they're pretty happy that I did, 4 different versions for them.
Now, I don't know if you're a limit player yourself, but How do you think you would do against the machine?
I've played the machine. I've lost a little bit. Maybe I'm about 500 loser, not much. I haven't played it enough. I was kind of waiting for my machine to come out. In other words, they had a generic one out that I played. But I think it'll be kind of fun for me to play against myself on that machine. And by the way, I have 3 world championships, 3 bracelets in the limit hold'em, which is pretty good. I think Negreanu has 2 and some other guy. Maybe David Shue has 2. And so, I wouldn't discount my limit hold'em skills.
Now, you're frequently seen wearing a cap with the name Aria on it. What's happening at the Aria that you think our listeners should be aware of?
Well, I mean, the Aria is just one of the most beautiful places to stay. And listen, all right, yes, I have an endorsement deal with the Aria. I stay there. But I've got to tell you something. My wife loves it there. We love the setup. We love the high-limit bar. I'll see Michael Jordan in there, Dustin Johnson, Wayne Gretzky. I mean, it seems like it's a place where a lot of people go to hang out, the high-limit bar. And so, I just love the flow and the layout. And they have, 6 world-class restaurants. Javier's is an award-winning restaurant, the Mexican restaurant there. John George's Steakhouse, Bar Masa Sushi. And so, you can get a $250 roll with Bar Masa with caviar and high-end tuna. And I just feel very, very fortunate to have a deal with them. And I love the flow of the place. There's a big spa there, pools. And so, they spent $1.2 billion on that place. And really, for me, it's an amazing place to be able to represent and hang out. And, you get off the elevators in the Sky Suite section, and I have to walk 50 yards, and they'll pull my car up where the limos are, and it's easy to navigate around there from the Sky Suites. You don't have to walk through the casino. Even to get to the poker room, you're just skirting the casino, and so it really is just a beautiful place, and I'm lucky to have a deal with them, I think, for the 4th year in a row. So, yes, I wear Aria hats and logos on all of the televised stuff that I do, and I'm proud to do it.
I have to say that it may be great for a poker player. A lot of our listeners are advantage players. Terrible place for advantage players. Very quick to throw people out. So, nice hotel, but not good for advantage players.
One of the reasons, I guess, is they're better than average surveillance. Now, surveillance in general is tasked with, first of all, protecting the assets of the casino, and secondly, for protecting the patrons and employees. Now, protecting the assets might mean kicking certain players out, but now poker players generally are not a threat to the assets of the company, since they play against each other and give a cut to the house for it. So for poker players, it seems like the protection of the surveillance it's got to be a good thing. Now, you play in some of the biggest tournaments in the world. Is protection of the players something you worry about?
Well, it's interesting. People claim that there was, a fair amount of corruption in poker back in the day. And so when I came along in 1988 and I started winning all these tournaments, I just felt like I couldn't win. I didn't know anybody. I was from Madison, Wisconsin. And when I started winning all these tournaments, I thought to myself, all right, this is a pretty good sign that tournaments are indeed clean. Because if some nobody from Madison, Wisconsin, 23 years old, can win all these tournaments, against all these established people that know everybody, it's a pretty good sign that, poker's clean. And so would never say that every casino, but I haven't really worried much about, being cheated in my lifetime. So that's a good thing. I think that, here and there, you have to be careful, but I think that, conspiracy theory, says once two people are in on something, it kind of spreads and people figure it out. And so I think that's kind of why I thought, all right. So I felt very safe and protected at the World Series, and almost every tournament I ever played in, I felt that way. Now, as far as, is that what you meant?
Yeah, but do you feel the same way about cash games?
I do, but I think that, you have to be careful. I mean, I think the one time I was really suspicious, the one time I'm pretty sure that I was cheated, and I was young and stupid, I guess, because I lost $55,000 of my $72,000 I had to my name, and and later was told about it and kind of figured it out in the middle of it, and my options were we left the cruise ship and I just paid it all. I said, listen, I don't want, maybe something happened to me, but I don't know for sure. I just have to pay, and I hated it because it almost busted me. And so there was one cruise ship where I felt like, where I knew basically I got cheated. And so, but I don't worry about it at most casinos. They rotate the dealers through pretty quickly, and especially I felt perfectly safe once they started having shuffle machines. Although I understand those machines could have potential issues too, but I've felt very safe throughout my career. Probably less than a handful of times, maybe only 2 or 3 times in 25 years of being a professional do I feel like I was cheated in some way.
This show, the Phil Ivey Baccarat edge sorting cases, have generated a lot of their interest to advantage players. Among top poker players, is the Phil Ivey Baccarat situation particularly interesting?
It's generated a lot of discussion, and I can say that Daniel Negreanu feels like if you have an edge on the casino, you should use it, is what he said publicly. My opinions I've kept to myself on this, so and that's all I want to say.
Okay. A little more than 3 months ago, during the World Cup, a Malaysian national named Paul Fua and some associates were arrested in Caesars Palace Villas on illegal gambling charges. High-stake poker players and others are said to have posted $2.5 million bail, and the players were released. In the last several days, it's come to light that in order to make the arrest, the FBI agents turned off the internet service to the villas and sent FBI agents in disguised as repairmen to try to fix the internet. Now, back in the good old days when I watched Mannix and the Rockford Files on TV, private investigators were always using such subterfuges, and I knew they were doing it against the bad guys because Jim Rockford and Joe Mannix were obviously the good guys. So today I'm more aware of the invasion of privacy issues and the government and other parties taking illegal actions in order to win a case. So the FBI using these tactics may well turn out to be enough malfeasance so that the Fua case and his partners, they get off scot-free. Now, Phil, do you have any thoughts on this general subject?
Well, I just feel like, when you're young, everything is just so black and white, you know what I mean? And it's just too easy to be too judgmental. As you get a little bit older, you're like, wow, all right, what really happened here? And you take a more wise look at it. I'm not saying more tolerant. I'm not saying that it's any less black and white, except that I'm saying it is, these things aren't just black and white. And so I think sometimes when you're young, it's easy to say, oh, he did this, he did that, without thinking about it. And still a lot of stupid people out there are quick to rise to judgments about things, and and certainly we see legions of stupid people online that will do that, and in some cases on some talk shows. But I feel like I don't really know any of the facts of that case, and I do know that those guys are were playing a lot of high stakes games in Macau, and became friends with a lot of poker players, and from what I understand, they're good guys, but I don't. But this is one that I don't have really a comment on.
Okay.
I will say this: I love the Rockford Files.
Good.
Jim Garner.
Yep. If I ever see Jim alive again, I'll let him know that you're a fan. Now,
I met him, and I met him at a charity poker tournament a few years back, I think.
He played in the World Series one year, too, I think. I think it was before your time, but...
Yeah, I think he did. And so, he liked poker. He played Maverick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I had to be a fan for that, and so yeah, he seemed like a really good guy.
Now, in the book Kill Phil, which was written by Blair Rodman and Lee Nelson, first published in 2006 and revised a few years later. Now, this is a tournament strategy where the not-so-knowledgeable player either goes all in or folds, so that players like you, who are far, far better, and now you're forced to make choices earlier than you want to make the choices. And so you allowed your picture to appear on the cover of the revised version, and yet you're still alive. Now, surely such a title as Kill Phil must have made you a bit uncomfortable, yeah?
Well, here's what I did do. They have like a gun sight on that book, and I said, you cannot put that gun sight on me. I don't want some weird guy to see a gun sight on me and come after me. So I made sure that the gun sight was not on me, and then I was like, okay, fine. And the net result of that book for me was very positive, because what happened is I want to play small ball. I wanted to play small pots. It was easier for me to kind of like chuck and jive and move and dance and move all in and just use my reading abilities to the maximum potential, to max potential. And so I was winning a lot doing it that way. Well, after that book was published, I had to play more patiently, and I was forced to play bigger pots, but I would have hands like ace-king or kings or queens or aces or jacks, and so I would end up getting massive chip leads in this tournament because people reading Kill Phil would just keep moving in with ace-9 and ace-10, and I'd call them with ace-king or kings. And so, 70% of the time, or roughly, I would, end up with all these massive chip stacks. And now I had the chip lead. Their strategy is even less effective because, now I only have to call a third of my chips with my ace, king, or kings or queens. So I don't think that it hurt me. I do think it was a well-written book, and they sold a ton of copies. And but I thought it would be cute to have my picture on it, so I gave them permission to do that.
I'm curious about age. It seems like the winners of the main event are younger and younger, and you were pretty young when you won, youngest winner ever at the time, right? So I'm wondering how you think age affects you and your abilities, and is it really a young man's game?
Well, I have one of the best records in the world the last couple of years in the World Series of Poker with all the deep runs I've made. So I'm not sure that age affects me very much. I know that I have to take a lot more days off now at age 50, and I had to take a weekend off. I know that I was battling a little bit of anxiety near the end of the World Series. I'd never had anxiety before, but after playing 10-hour days for so long and all the pressure I put on myself to win, and after finishing sixth in the stud tournament late, the level of exhaustion starts to mount, and so I probably need to adopt a strategy to get a little bit more rest. But I think the fact of the matter is that if we had 8,000 players in this tournament, 6,500 of them were below the age of 34, I think, or 6,000. So it's not surprising to see a lot of those guys. And frankly, a lot of the people under the age of 35 have put a lot more effort into studying the game. Poker became hot in 2002, and all these college kids came into the game, all these geniuses, 18, 19. It was something that if you wanted to be a professional poker player back in 02, 03, 04, you didn't want to just quit your job. And so people that were married and older, they can't just quit their job. Their wives would kill them. And so you had all these young single people playing the game. Minds are pretty elastic, too. And so, not as much to lose. And so they devote 10 hours a day to the game. And so, and so you look at the skew there of people under the age of 35, tons more of them play in the World Series of Poker, and they're better players. So, I don't necessarily buy they're less tired or whatever theory.
Now, back in 1989, when you won the World Series of Poker main event, you ended up being heads up with Johnny Chan, who at the time was a two-time defending champion. Now, on the final hand, you opened 40,000. He raised 130,000. You re-raised him all in. Now, this is pre-flop. You had a pair of nines. He had ace seven suited. Your nines held up, although it was quite dramatic the way it unfolded. Now, you going in all in there was kind of a Kill Phil move, although it was 15 years before the Kill Phil book came out. Now that you're one of the best in the world, would you have played the same hand the same way against Johnny Chin?
Probably. There's always context in these things. Exactly 4 hands earlier, I opened for 35,000 in the final hand, not 40, by the way. But the blinds were 5 and 10,000, and so I opened for 35,000 with ace seven of diamonds. Exactly 4 hands earlier, and it got to Chan, and he raised it. He called the 35, and he raised like 140,000 more, 130, some huge raise. And I was like, wow, what is he doing? That's a double times the pot raise. No one does that. And so I'm like, that's unusual. And we'd been playing around 30 minutes at that point, and he was frustrated. I'd leaned into him right when the match started and said, listen, I'm going to play perfect poker. If you want to beat me, you're going to have to play perfect and get lucky. So I think he was just a little bit frustrated. And when he made that move, and I sensed a shift in his strategy. And so exactly 4 hands later, I looked at nines on the button again, and right away, it's like everything just unfolded in my mind. I'm going to open, he's going to raise, and I'm going to move all in. It was just like I could already see what was going to happen. So I made it 35,000, he raised 140, and quickly I said, I'm all in. And I think he had about 600,000 in chips. I had about 1.2 million in chips at that point. Maybe it was $1 million, but I think 1.2. So the pot ended up being 1.2 million, and he went into the tank. He started studying and studying and studying, and I just sat there. I knew he didn't. I knew he would have called me instantly with ace queen, ace king, jacks. So I knew he didn't have an overpair because there's no tens. He would have snap called me. And so I already knew this because in his 2 previous world championships, he'd moved on with like ace 4 and ace 9 before the flop or something like that. And so I thought that I knew more about Texas Hold'em than the rest of the world did at that point. And I said, I'm not going to get my money in there with an ace 7 or an ace 8 or an ace 9. I'm gonna wait. And so having jammed it in there, now I'm sitting there, and I remember I had a yellow Walkman on at the time, and I remember sitting up on the chair, and I remember just don't say a word because you don't know whether you want him to call or fold. I was kind of rooting for a fold because I started to think at that point he had king-queen, and if he had king-queen, I don't want to play a race where I think I can get a significant advantage on him. And so I thought, all right, don't give away the strength of your hand by talking. Don't say a word. Right now you just have to be calm, observant, zen, Phil, and just see what happens, because this might be your chance to win the main event. And you might want him to fold, but you might want him to call. And I was pretty sure he would call me with ace-jack. And so in my mind, it was king-queen. When he called with ace-6 of spades, I was a little surprised because I felt like, or ace-7 of spades, I guess it was. Was it ace-6 or ace-7? I don't quite remember, but I think it was ace-6. Anyway, when he made that call, I was a little bit surprised because, remember, it was about 440,000 more for him to call.
Phil, thank you. I'm getting the message from our producer that we're out of time. We've been talking to Phil Hellmuth. Thank you very, very much for talking to our listeners. Richard, thank you for being here. Go out and hit lots of royal flushes, everybody. Good night.
You've been listening to Gambling with an Edge with your hosts, Bob Dancer and Richard Munchkin. Subscribe to the show in iTunes, and episodes will be delivered to you automatically every week. Archived versions of past shows may be found at bobdancer.com and richardmunchkin.com. We welcome emails at gamblingwithanedge@gmail.com. Bob Dancer and Richard Munchkin are both available on Facebook and welcome your questions. The sponsors for the show are the South Point Hotel, Casino and Spa, the M Resort, the Palms Casino Resort, and the website videopoker.com. Join us again next week for another Gambling with an Edge.